Hello everybody, and welcome to the best session of the Edinburgh TV Festival. I'm Chris Shaw, I'm the chair of the festival, and this is Catherine Bray, who is the editor of Random Acts. This is the One to Watch live pitch. If you don't know, Ones to Watch is our senior talent scheme here. Each year, the talent scheme selects 30 or so people, and they tend to be the most impressive rising stars of the industry. They're all invited to come here to Edinburgh to attend sessions and to improve their craft. And today, 8 of them are going to be pitching live to us both for the opportunity to win funding for a Random Acts film. And to see that film screened on Channel 4. And the kicker is that they've only got 90 seconds to pitch it, and that is really tough. So without further ado, Catherine, can you tell us more about what makes a Random Acts film and what you're looking for?
Sure. It's actually one of the more difficult questions in television because Random Acts really is this kind of multi-headed hydra of creativity. You know, we do music videos, we do spoken word, dance, animations, uncategorizable combinations of sort of all of those things. Actually, we want more of those. We want more uncategorizable stuff. We don't tend to do documentaries, but other than that, and other than the sort of 4-minute time limit on the film itself, it really is an extraordinarily broad creative brief. I mean, to sort of go a bit sort of Avengers DC on you, the origin story of Random Acts is Tabitha Jackson, very talented woman now at Sundance, said to John Hay that we've got too much TV that is sort of about the stuff. We want to make the stuff itself for Random Acts. That's what Random Acts is. It's not art about artists, it is the art. And that's what I love about commissioning it. I really think it's one of the best jobs in television because you get to meet so many different kinds of creatives. You get to meet sort of brilliant people on the Ones to Watch scheme. You get to meet, sort of puppeteers, crazy visionaries, poets. It's really a very exciting thing to be allowed to curate. This year is particularly exciting because we've launched a new series of the show that sort of started on Monday at midnight with Zoe Ashton hosting. She was always my #1 choice to host the series ever since I came on in February. I'm sort of relatively new into the role, and she was just sort of absolutely perfect combination of someone who's a director, a writer, she's writing a novel at the moment, and of course she all made us laugh like drains for 4 years in Fresh Meat for Channel 4 as VOD. So we're really excited to have her on board, and I hope you'll all tune in on this Monday, forthcoming. She's got her own short in the show that week, so that's really exciting. And hopefully we're going to find a film from you guys today that will play out on the show probably around this time next year. So
let's see what of our pitchers have got for us today. First up, we've got Rachel Kinley, who's a freelance series director. Rachel, would you like to come up to the podium?
Hello everybody. There's a massive contradiction in our society. We bemoan teenagers staying inside, playing on iPads, losing contact with the natural world, yet we strip them of places outside where they can be. Holly McNeish's poem, No Ball Games, encapsulates the tensions involved with this situation.
By day, no play, no ball game signs, no throwing, catching, football matches, one broken window, council snatches, every patch of makeshift pitch, not got a garden, give a shit.
Earlier this year, Holly was given the Ted Hughes Award for Poetry. She's the voice of our age, and in her distinctive, punchy style, she emphatically depicts the restrictions on teenagers' freedom. This short film seeks to give greater impact to her words and further highlights the simple but potent truth that teens aren't welcome in public spaces because they're seen as a threat. Holly will be filmed reading her poem in a series of locations where ball games are not allowed. She'll be intercut with images of teens wandering the streets and inside looking bored. They'll also deliver some lines to add extra impact. The battles of our own teenage years may now be distant memories, but how are today's teens supposed to grow up and care about society if we don't allow them to feel part of it?
I think the hardest age is teen. Too old to play, too young to wander free.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks very much. Well, I think first up, I hate those signs. So you really all instantly kind of hit me with those. I remember them from my own childhood a very long time ago, and they're still there, amazingly. They're just so negative, and I totally get why you homed in on them. I also think that you've alighted on a subject which feels very contemporary and very topical. There definitely is one of the many disconnects in our society is a generational one, and I think tackling it through spoken word and images feels like a jolly good idea. And I thought you did a really nice, simple presentation.
Thank you. Well, it's very random acts, which is obviously brilliant. So I think one of the things that sort of Chris has said is that you've tapped into something that it feels very universal. So one of the sort of aims of random acts is to break out of that sort of like slightly sort of art house ghetto, and for some of the shorts at least to go wide, go on the internet, go viral. And this feels like one of the ones that could do that. So that's very interesting to me as a commissioner. Obviously, Holly's a name, but it's not even just about her. It's about the fact that you've hit on this no ball games idea that feels incredibly contemporary and also incredibly relatable. It's like not a difficult thing to understand, and that's crucial when you're pitching. You want to have that sort of one-liner that just grabs us and holds our attention. I'd love to know a little bit more about the kind of the team behind you and how you'd see the film coming together on a sort of practical sense.
Yeah, so obviously Holly's involved. We've spoken to her. She's really keen to do it. And also I've got a cameraman called Hector Kevington Postles. He's done a lot of blue chip camera work, but also he has done kind of people focused films as well. And we're going to be shooting this on a mixture of long lens, Osmo and drone, and shallow depth of field, and we'll grade it and we'll kind of bring out the weather of the situations where we're filming to enhance that disparity. We'll have a drone that we fly over to enhance the empty nature of these spaces and then film it compared with kind of teenagers inside, insular in their rooms, looking lonely. And there's other parts in the poem as well that Holly delivers, which are about how teens they don't really have anywhere to go because under 18s, they're not allowed to be in bars. So there's a line in her poem as well about how, they walk past kind of clubs where the queues are. So we'll film them going along those kind of public spaces, but then also separated from any way of interacting with the natural world when they're alone and insular.
Will it be presumably all the film will be reenacted, will it?
Yeah, exactly. We won't stage people outside the clubs, they'll be there, but we'll film and interact with them in that way.
And how closely do you see it sort of sticking to the text of the poem? Because I think one of the risks for random acts when we commission spoken word is you'll have this wonderful poem and then someone will go out and get a bunch of images and just sort of plaster the poetry all over them, and it's sort of not done in a sort of necessarily particularly sophisticated way.
No, definitely. I'm working together with Holly to plan that. She, in fact, wants her own daughter to be in it as well. She wants to kind of have that personal side with it, where her daughter's part of the teens who are walking around with their ball past no ball game sign. So the words will very much feather with what it is that we're shooting, and we're working together in planning that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Oliver Martin, who's a digital producer and YouTube manager for BBC Earth. Welcome.
How long do you think you can hold your breath for? 30, 40, maybe 50 seconds at a push. Now, most people struggle to hold their breath for even 40 seconds. Filmed with one continuous shot, my film will feature a freediver called Lily as she holds her breath underwater for 3 minutes. The film starts with Lily's face full frame as she says, "How long can you hold your breath?" Lily inhales deeply before dropping into a water tank as the camera seamlessly tracks down. Lily's voice comes through as VO, making the audience feel like they're there, in the water with her. She describes the feelings of fear and adventure as she took the plunge for the first time. With practice, she learnt to preserve oxygen by reaching a mental state of absolute calm, allowing her to better control her body and dive deeper and longer. She describes her experiences in a world few will ever see and the feeling of wonder as she encounters all manner of exotic creatures. Breathtaking footage of her swimming with whales, dolphins, and through giant cathedral-like structures under the waves will be overlaid, giving a juxtaposition to her static face underwater. Lily is a true explorer of mind, body, and the deep blue.
The final seconds will see her rise majestically to the surface and take a deep breath. I have a tank, diver, and crew ready to go. I'd like to thank you for your time and welcome any questions.
Thank you. Were any of those people Lily?
Yes, so Lily is a friend from school, but people donated footage for this presentation.
Right, it's very striking, the imagery, isn't it?
The thing I really like about this is that it's stitched into the very bones of the film that it be 3 minutes long, which is perfect for random acts. Something that sort of some of the pictures we don't go with tend to have in common is where it feels like somebody has been wanting to make a short film for a while. You know, maybe they've applied to a few different schemes and then they've decided to crunch this one down to fit the random acts brief. This feels like it's tailor-made for random acts because of that sort of novelty of the 3 minute period, which is great.
Is there any issue for you about someone speaking while they're free diving? Because first of all, the imagery is so stunning. You just, and as you said, there's the breathing.
So I think I wanted it to be quite a stylised piece, and I watched Mulholland Drive, and there's a section where there's an opera singer on stage, and then you get this it messes with your mind because it looks like she stops breathing, but the sound continues. I wanted that to be the trigger for them people to think about or feel like they're there with her, so as if you're in her own head. That the voiceover is you're
so
part of her.
Sound is going to be a really central thing of this.
So.
Yeah, that's going to be absolutely critical because I suppose my reservation about this is that it could easily turn into an illustrated interview, you know, beautiful images and then she's speaking over the top. Would you craft what she's saying or script it and have her read it out, or would it just be from...
Yes, so I sought advice before writing this pitch, and so the idea of finding a state of calm in your mind allows you to control the body, use less oxygen, and so on. So I would sit down with Lily, whoever I decide to use as the free diver, to be in the submersion tank, to work on a narrative that was that made sense, that was true of a free diver's spirit, but also told a story for the audience.
Mm-hmm. So it's transformative, not documentary, the
yes,
script?
I would say so.
And do you know the people who can shoot this?
Yes, so I am a producer, so I'd look to produce it. I've got a director who has both documentary style under his belt, but also a more cinematic advert.
And they work underwater, do they?
So they don't work underwater, but at the end of the footage, there's a tank based just outside of Peterborough, which is a very decent rate, which is well lit for production. So I could shoot what I need for that, and then buy in some archive because it's not a great amount of money to go and shoot out the stuff in the ocean.
Yeah, well, that was pretty cool archive. Yeah. Is that it? No, I think it's a very clear, self-explanatory pitch, and beautifully illustrated.
It's really different as well. I think that's the first time I've been pitched something in the area of free diving, and that is always a bonus with random acts. I was talking to someone in the lobby just now who said, "Oh, I know someone who does puppet comedy," and immediately your brain goes, "I don't have a puppet comedy. I should go and look at that."
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So next up, we have Clarissa Maycock, who's a producer at the BBC.
Hi. So my pitch is about the end of the world. I'm hoping I won't look back on it as the end of the world, but ask me again in about 85 seconds. It's called Drawing to a Close, and it's a 3-minute animated short with a voiceover narration. The programme explores some of the underreported effects of climate change, such as heat death, poisonous oceans, and widespread famine. It's inspired by an article in the New York Times magazine called The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells. So the short would utilise the style of hand-drawn animation, with the animator's hands still in frame in order to draw attention to the craft. The visuals would depict the phenomena being described in the voiceover, but also the style of the animation would reflect the destruction being described. So fun, cartoonish styles using lush colours and effortless strokes would become rushed and messy, with the blackening of pigments, a melting of crayons, fire, water and dirt on the canvas. Finally, the paper tears away. This raises the question, how far are we the architects of our own destruction? For this project, I'd like to work with a company called Fine Media, an agency who've worked with lots of animators on projects for clients including the BBC, The Guardian and the Open University.
Well, excuse the pun, but obviously it's a hot topic. And a lot of great ideas are inspired by this relatively new form of literary journalism, which is clearly your starting point. Tell me the new things that you think will be exposed. You mentioned heat death as one. Are there other aspects of climate change that you think are underreported, as it were?
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing that struck me about the article and sort of surprised me, is that I think a lot about global warming and a lot about climate change and worry about my carbon emissions and everything, but I think of it in quite a linear way in terms of temperature rising and air pollution. And when I read this article, and it was talking very much about things like the carbon content in the oceans and how they'll become acidic, and also just the makeup of our air and how suddenly it won't become breathable anymore, and just the melting ice releasing diseases that we haven't faced for a while. It was all things that I hadn't even thought of in terms of climate change, even though it is something that I care a lot about. And so I think that's why I zeroed in on it, because it felt like, even for someone like me who thinks a lot about it, I hadn't thought about it perhaps enough, or in some of the ways that could potentially be destructive for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've read that article. It is, I mean, if you're into horror stories, give it a whirl. It's just,
it's horrible.
Like Roland Emmerich movie or something compressed into a few thousand words. I suppose a lot of the information in it is quite technical. It's to do with things like the sort of acid balance in the sea and that sort of thing. Is there a sort of tension between that and what you're trying to show in the animation? How are you going to bridge that gap between the sort of the art and this kind of very sort of fine detail science?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because in the videos that this company, Fine Media, usually make, they usually use just a locked-off camera and have the animators using lots of different tools and varieties of things, sometimes just mustard or ketchup or different things to use the animation. And I was thinking that even though in the voiceover narrated would be quite heavy and dense, you know, the visuals would be very, very interesting and moving very quickly. And I know what you mean. I think I wanted it to start off as quite sort of fun and then feel more bleak towards the end, as everything gets torn away and everything washes away. There's not a lot left at the end.
Feels like there's something in common with those sort of animations in the 70s about what to do if there's a nuclear attack. Yeah. And sort of quite childish style of animation.
Quite dark at the centre, yeah.
I mean, I'm not suggesting this is an infographic, but it's from that world, or borrows from that world. How you've given us some indication of how the creative treatment there, but is there a voice, or is it just sort of words on the screen or images?
Yeah, well, I'd want to have a voiceover describing everything that was happening, and I was thinking about having someone. The ideal person I was thinking about having was Josie Long, because she's a comedian, but she's also an activist, and she'd be able to sort of bring a lot of empathy to the words and start off perhaps with some humour that then becomes more serious towards the end, and sort of have that sort of start feeling quite light and then moving to maybe being a little dark.
Thank you very much. Well, that's great. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Right. Next up, Christopher Osborne, a freelance production coordinator.
Good morning. I want you to imagine it's 9:30 on a cold and wet Friday night in Glasgow. There's not really another kind, to be fair. You're wrapped up on the couch watching your favourite box set, and the door goes. Who's at the door at this time? Who's the only person that you want at your door that will make you truly happy? A Chinese delivery man. That Hungry Love is a comedy set in the stairwells of a Scottish tenement close. It's filmed through the eyes of our protagonist, the Chinese delivery man, who visits the many faces of Glasgow. It's an insight into the trials and tribulations of modern-day Scots, from seeking a connection with a significant other. From Mrs. Rice on the 3rd floor, it just loves her dogs, to the McLaughlins downstairs, it just love a bit of dogging. I want to explore these stereotypes and the space in between. The crime-ridden streets of Taggart, the surreal and bizarre worlds of Limmy shows, and the optimism of Sunshine on Leaf. These are not distinct, separate parts of Scottish life. They all intertwine and merge into the society that we know today. I want to explore this through the common thread of love. Showcasing a wide range of acting, writing and production talent, that hungry love will showcase a wide range throughout Scotland. Love truly is the only healthy option for us all. With your help, I like to deliver it to a Channel 4 audience. Thank you.
First of all, full marks for noble endeavour. I love the idea of delivering love, and I love my food too. If I'm absolutely honest, I got a little bit lost between the opening conceit of food being delivered. Is this one guy or woman going to be delivering food to lots of different establishments? Is that the central theme, or have I missed the point?
Yeah, we are using the delivery man as a means to showcase the different voices in the close. On a Friday night in Glasgow, it won't just be the people who is actually knocking the doors to deliver the food. You'll have people coming down the stairs, going to nights out, people being thrown out of their house. I just want to give people a very impactful...
It's his point of view, though,
yeah,
is it? Yeah.
Blast of Glaswegian life.
Fair enough.
Something that we should say, since we're commenting on the pitches, is that the way that you dropped us right into the world of the film and made us laugh, that's always great, you know. It's, I think, the first sort of pitch that sort of approached it in that way, and it's a style that I like. Like Chris, I have a question about sort of how you're going to fit all of this into 4 minutes, because it sounds incredibly wide-ranging. What's the visual style? It sounds like something that could almost be filmed in flow motion or something like that. Yeah,
so I kind of peep show style through the eyes of a delivery man walking into this. It's essentially a world this close. It's ups and downs. It's got its different characterisations through the different characters. When he goes through, I want to use different writers to bring voices to the different characters within this close. And it will be impactful because as he's trying to deliver one, you have people, as I said before, you have people coming down the stairs. It's a real kind of flash bang. Yeah. Of
how many people do you think you're gonna? How many conversations or sort of vignettes are we going to experience?
To be honest, within the time frame, I'd imagine we'd have at least kind of 15 different voices, which seems a lot, but that's the way life is nowadays. Like you've got people coming at you from all angles, and if you've ever been to any busy city in an environment on a Friday night, you're going to have people coming at you from all angles. And I think shooting it from his point of view, it might feel you're leaving a bit kind of lost in this world, but it should give you a feeling of a broad spectrum of that environment.
And why did you think that the food delivery guy was the sort of the messenger, as it were, of this?
I think he's the modern day postman, really. Like he's seen people at the best of times, at the worst of times. He's seen them. Maybe they are physically hungry, but maybe they just want the company or somebody coming to the door. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've got reasons why they're not allowed to leave the house. Maybe they wanted to leave the house, but I think he's just meeting everybody at different stages of a psyche.
There is something there around the idea of this person who meets this sort of wide cross-section of people. I think that's really interesting. I would question getting 15 people into 4 minutes in live action, and so maybe the way forward for this would be to think about something like an animation where you can move at the speed that you want and you're not kind of hamstrung by the challenges of doing this sort of for real.
Yeah, I would say I've obviously already contacted crew and talent behind it who I'm very confident can achieve this.
Great.
Both new talent and experienced talent in the Glasgow and wider kind of west of Scotland area.
Congratulations, great idea. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
That's the halfway point. It's absolutely relentless, isn't it? Now, time for Cherish Oteka, is that pronounced correctly? A director-producer at the Scaled Fence Films.
Vogue is a form of dance that was created by gay and trans people of colour. Through voguing, people who are assigned male at birth are able to explore, reclaim and celebrate feminine aspects of their identity. The Vogue Dance Project is a 3-minute film that fuses dance with documentary and follows a group of young friends as they unapologetically vogue their way across London, having fun and reclaiming everyday spaces that usually make them feel the pressure to assimilate. We will hear from all of the voguers throughout the film, but sound bites will be used sparingly to add depth and context to what a huge act of courage this is. Themes explored include sexuality, gender as a construct, and how race plays into that, because while this year marks a huge anniversary for the LGBT community, it's an important time to shine a light on the experiences of queer people of colour who often are still fighting for acceptance within their own communities. I actually went out with a few voguing friends of mine to shoot as taster for this project, so please take a look.
Voguing has allowed me to truly explore and discover myself. Ballroom culture challenges toxic masculinity, where it's like this hyper-aggressive macho like persona that people feel pressured to be in. Having this community of other queer people of colour, it really felt like home.
I like that. I don't know if this is too reductive, but that looked like a really progressive version of Fame. That was those are friends of yours that you went out with, yeah?
Yeah, they
and
are,
would they feature in your film, you hope?
Yeah, definitely. We had a lot of kind of discussions about what it meant to feel marginalised in everyday spaces, and it was really interesting. It just emerged that there isn't really one space. It just feels like being a minority within a minority within a minority, you constantly have to negotiate and assimilate kind of, and yeah, just adjust aspects of your identity. And so I really had a good time in kind of discussing these themes with them, and I'd love them to feature in it.
Looked like fun, yeah.
I love that you're approaching something as joyous as ballroom in such an intersectional way. I think that's really important. As you say, it was the 50th anniversary of the partial decriminalisation of male homosexuality this year. And we saw a lot of brilliant work around that, but a lot of it was very sort of pale and male, and it would be really good to sort of get more voices into that. My reservations, I suppose, would be that the documentary elements of this don't sort of fit with the sort of ideal sort of, random act brief. But that said, I think if you worked with a choreographer and you were sort of to emphasise the elements of it that are around choreography and creating something in the city, perhaps doing it as a single take, something ambitious like that, that could really sort of elevate it and take it out of the space of being a sort of, straight doc.
Definitely. One of the dancers in that is actually a trained choreographer. And so that's definitely something we'd like to kind of explore and celebrate. There's so many different aspects to Vogue, so I'd really like to kind of highlight and showcase it as an art form itself. But I feel like the sound bites will be used sparingly, but it's important to kind of add context to it, because ballroom came from the struggle and it came from feeling alienated, and it's really important not to separate the dance form from its roots in kind of, overcoming oppression.
I loved where you filmed the dancing. I've seen people dancing in subways and tube trains, pole dancing actually. It's quite random too. But are there, you do bus stops and undergrounds? Is that what you want to stay in the public domain like that, sort of challenging preconceptions and challenging the public in a way?
Exactly, because I think the pressure is in different spaces to shift and shape elements of your identity, and so by going to very ordinary spaces and saying this is who I am, I think it sends a very bold message, and there is kind of the sense of jeopardy in some of these different spaces. Yeah. We did a scene on an estate, and it was really, it was really challenging.
Would you show reactions?
Exactly, yeah.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
Great, okay.
Yeah, there's something interesting in the idea of unsafe spaces in contrast to the sort of safe spaces of the ballroom, and I think that could be really nice.
Thank you. It's a really interesting idea. So, pitch number 6. This is Natalie Pandia, who's a planning manager for BBC Two and BBC Factual Commissioning.
I want you to think about a time when you thought you didn't belong somewhere and how that made you feel. It's lonely and it's isolating. We talk about immigration a lot, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But we don't talk enough about the people who grow up here feeling as though they're part of two worlds, but don't really belong in either. A British Asian spoken word poet would write their response to this, and their words would form the backbone of the piece. The confusion, the contradictions, and the expectations at its heart. We'd see a series of sequences illustrating times in a girl's life growing up when she felt an acute sense of being different. Each scene would have a counterpart. One showing the busyness, colour, and tradition of her home life, filmed with the camera on her and her family. The other shot from her point of view, showing her growing up in Britain and going to school, with the camera acting as her eyes. At the start, we'd see a young girl preparing for a family event, dressing in traditional clothes, and then her dressing herself for her first day of school, emphasising how the different materials look and feel to her. From meals through to first loves, we culminate in an emotional confrontation between her and her family about this impossible position that she's in. Ethnic minorities experience comparatively high rates of mental illness, and one of the theories as to why is a sense of dislocation and a lack of belonging. Through this film, I'd like to encourage more compassion and understanding towards people whose heritage is different from our own. Thank you.
So your route into this is super topical, dealing with immigration and a disjointed, disconnected society. What was the sort of starting point for the inspiration then? How personal is this for you?
It's definitely something that myself and people I knew experienced growing up, and I think it's something children experience now. We talk a lot about the enriching part of immigration in our country, how much it enriches society. Other people also talk about how it can be destructive to a society, but I don't ever really hear people talk about the personal part of it, the bit that I felt when I grew up, which was how can you be two things at once, and how can you live a life that feels one way at one time and another way at another time, a part where you're perhaps quite safe but also claustrophobic at home, and then a part where you feel very exposed and very different.
Thank you.
I think the bit of your pitch that sort of really set that light bulb going in my head was when you got really specific. I think there's a risk with this that you're talking in quite general terms about the experience of millions of people, and obviously that is going to be different depending on where they are economically, gender, the different types of immigrant experience. So what was exciting, you started talking about her first day at school, having to use put on different clothes and different fabrics. And I think if you could sort of zero in on something that made this a really sort of specific and personal piece, it could be really interesting, because there's that risk of generalisation. So would you be basing it, would you sort of talk to a particular person or have a particular writer on board?
So I'd want a spoken word poet, a British Asian female ideally, someone like Jaspreet Kaur, to write their response to this. And then perhaps chronologically I'd want to show pinnacle formative periods in a girl's life that very visually express how different she felt. So, the school, how the materials feel is one thing, but also the ritual of eating meals. That is a huge thing. It's a huge cultural difference. So I think you'd want to zero in those very specific times that look and feel totally different.
And how would you shape that to 4 minutes?
I think you'd probably pick about 4 to 5 very specific scenes, chronologically leading up to her teenage years. I think you want to keep it in that very difficult time for any teenager growing up, and just so the other layer that this adds. So I'd say, 4 to 5 key beats that culminate in something much more emotional and dramatic at the end.
This is sort of my journalist head here, but we're not talking about people arriving in this country in the last few years, and we're not talking about people, your parents' generation, who came here in the 50s, 60s, post-war. It's very specifically a second generation issue. Do you feel they've been overlooked or underestimated in some of the problems that they're facing?
Perhaps. I think it's second generation, but I also think it's children that come here. It's anyone really who is who has parents, who has family, whose cultural experience, whose experience of growing up has been so different to what the general, I mean, even though the British experience is varied. But yes, particularly second generation and children who have moved here. So although it's particular to British Asian, I'd hope that some of the themes strike a chord with people who have, you know, moved here in the last 5 years, 2 years.
Right, thank you. Great, well, that's very clear. And thank you very much. Thank you. So our next pitcher is Bonita Wadwa-Kolchak, who's a freelance assistant producer. Please.
Hi everyone. So, Sahas. It means courage in Hindi, and I myself, my background is I'm half Hindu and I'm half Sikh. I like to call myself a hide and seek. I ain't gonna. So if you also type Sahas into your phone, it autocorrects to sassy. So make that what you will. Right, my inspiration. Well, actually, first, let me tell you what Sahas is. It is a celebration of gender fluidity in the Asian community, and I'm very, very proud of my generation in showing courage in educating our elders. So, my inspiration, I don't know if you guys remember, but this is Crown Prince Movendra, who was on BBC Three's Undercover Prince, and when he came out on TV, I was like, this is amazing, this is the best TV ever, because it was such a shock for my culture, and it was a very proud moment and a moment I will not forget. Also, RuPaul's Drag Race, I just love it, I'm not going to lie. Right, so I've also got Maya the Drag Queen and beautiful traditional dancing, so let me get into that. Right. As well as celebrating the new, I also want to embrace our traditions and show fluidity with movement. And also, these are some queens that I really, really admire. This is Maya the Drag Queen, Queen Harish, which is also my dad's name, which is wonderful, and Maya Armour. These guys really, really inspire me. So with the merging of traditional dance and these fabulous queens getting ready, I'm hoping this will give Sahas to others who are watching. Thank you.
Well, I wish I'd seen Undercover Prince, but I would definitely take an interest in this, because it sounds like a very unusual subculture from, you know, originating in a different part of the world. So it's a great topic. That in itself kind of makes it a random act, I guess, that it's so unusual. Is this a dance film, or is this a kind of introduction to sort of certain individuals with a certain outlook on life?
It's going to be a dance film. I don't want any dialogue in it. I just want to show the fluid movements of the dancers with the Queen getting ready. And yet, to be honest, I just want to enhance the colours and just have it as a celebration for how far we've come now, and also how far we have to go, because it's quite rare. And whenever I watch RuPaul's Drag Race, I'm always like, where's the Indians at?
I mean, I'm a big fellow fan of RuPaul's Drag Race, due to be forever. And, you know, so in terms of the subject, you've got me, absolutely. The bit that I felt was sort of slightly missing is you've pitched the subject really well, but I still don't really have a complete sense of what the film would be. Have you talked to choreographers that you would want to work with on this? Have you got a sort of DOP in mind? Like, what are we seeing over the 4 minutes as it plays out? Could you talk me through that a little bit more?
Of course. So I want to do it in a studio, and I want it to be quite dark. So what I'll have is I'll have the dancers, who I can find quite a few because I got married, so I know a few performers. So I'll have them dancing, and then juxtaposed to that, I'll have our fabulous Queen getting ready. But it's going to be quite close-up shots, so you don't really know who's getting ready. And also, the art of tying a sari, if any of you guys have ever done it, it's quite intense, I'm not going to lie. So I'll have that, close-ups of that with the dancing, and then I'll merge them together with a fabulous Bollywood-style ending of a reveal. Which I kind of just love in the films.
And with the dancing, is there a style of dance that you've got in mind? Is it sort of modern or Bollywood or...?
It will be traditional Hindi dance, which is lots of fluid, quite gorgeous movements.
I was hoping for a Bollywood ending, and you've given me one, so that's great. Are you into you're just into cutting different traditional dance with a drag queen getting ready for her performance, his performance?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the dancers will get into formation and then reveal the fabulous queen. But music-wise, I forgot to add, I love MIA. I think she's wonderful, and she did a song for Slumdog Millionaire called Oh Saya, and it's it's like they're on a train, and it's the traditional beats, and then it gets into her doing some fabulous whatever she does best. So it's like a really beautiful mix of traditional and new. So I'd love to use that track.
What style of drag are we talking? Is it sort of like traditional comic, or the kind of much more sort of beauty-oriented?
Because there's no dialogue, I'm going to go beauty-oriented.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Really interesting. Okay, so our last picture, I'm sure not the least, Tom Will, account director with publicity firm IJPR, please.
This is my close friend Stuart, a queer tattoo artist inspired by Japanese tattooing and pink politics. He's worked in respected studios in London and Berlin. With Stuart's tattoo art, his own skin as a canvas, working with an animator, the film will tell a visceral human story about an artist's struggle to retain a sense of self. An art form inextricably linked to the blood, used to tell a story about an artist facing a blood cancer. Stuart was recently diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia. We hear a soundscape of Stuart's bustling studio, suppressed by Stuart's thoughts and heartbeat, an introspective voiceover. We move in close on a tattoo across his chest. We hear the faint synthesized music and the sound of a tattoo gun's harsh rasp. The animation showing an uneasy duality at the point of a needle. A diagnosis was made, blood cancer. The doctor's advice, no more tattoos. The tattoo fades, the turning point of the film. We take in the whole frame again. In Stuart's words, every shed of who I was washed away. If I didn't carry on expressing myself through tattoos, I would always look down and see my body as frozen in time, a physical reminder of when my life was stopped in its tracks. The best way to improve my well-being was by gaining small moments of control, tattoos. The film titled Drawing Blood is not about cancer, it's about the human condition, how we build foundations of self to weather the storm. The camera returns to its original frame, Stuart shaping his narrative once more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's a really, really smart idea and very, a lot of pathos too. I may have missed it in there, for which I apologise, but part of this story is being told through tattoos. Are they animated or are they on the skin?
On the skin, yes. I think I've spoken to like a VFX editor about this. I think it's really important that the tattoo is animated on Stuart's body, because the whole sort of premise is about him feeling like when he was told you shouldn't get any more tattoos, that his body was then just like a memorial to that moment forever, that he was stuck in that moment of being diagnosed and he was just a cancer patient from then on. And so I spoke to the VFX editor about how you can, it could be him and then zoom in onto a part of his body, and then the tattoo becomes animated with his own art and animates and tells the story. And then we move back out at that turning point of the film whereby he's sort of regaining his sense of self and moving past that, and you move out and the sort of new art again, after the tattoos fade away at that turning point, and it comes back, and it's that new beginning and regaining your sense of self.
First of all, sorry to hear about your friend. It's a really sort of strong idea. From the sort of point of view of the animation, if we were pitching under different circumstances, it seems like the sort of thing where it would be really great to see a bit of proof of concept. Is that something that you sort of talk to your VFX guy about? Because it sounds like quite a complicated VFX job to actually do the sort of animations on the body.
Yeah, and was pretty confident that it's that it's doable. I think for me, what I was sort of really keen to get the advice on was about, is it, because I don't want it to be that he cuts too close up on skin, which I'm sure is easier to do. I want it to zoom in, and then you sort of see this begin to move and his tattoo arts begin to appear and fade. And yeah, I think depending, working on the way that we film it, I think it is possible to do it, yeah, for sure.
And is it the whole film is animations on tattoos, or are we cutting away to other visual elements?
All animations on tattoos, so it's sort of moving in on his body and his art, his tattoo animating his story as he narrates it over the top, not sort of spoken to camera, because I want it to feel like a sort of internal thoughts, and he's kind of trying to, this is something he's struggling with over the kind of bustle of his studio, and he's like still maintaining his sort of personal and professional life. So it's all his art.
And it's the story since his diagnosis, or his life story?
Yeah, so I think it moves from his diagnosis. He was living and working in Berlin, and he's since returned to the UK and to Brighton, and it's sort of moving. It sort of moves from diagnosis to that turning point of having been told, you shouldn't really continue, to how do you regain that sense of self and move past it, because obviously tattooing is so wrapped up in his identity. And then we move to the sort of third section, the concluding section of the film, where it's the regaining of that and the new art and the new beginning.
So there's optimism in there, as well as
it's not
tragedy.
meant to be no violins or anything. It's I want it to like with music wise, just sort of for the animated bits. I was thinking like sort of electronic sort of music soundtrack, sort of that ties in with the sort of Berlin and the kind of his sort of life in Berlin and.
Sounds like on the one hand you've got the sort of quite potentially poetic considerations of identity and the self, and then at the other end you're trying to tell the story of he had a diagnosis, he was told by the doctor not to get more tattoos. How do you negotiate between the sort of more factual side of it and the...
I think it's a journey, really. I think it's telling that I think the cancer element is sort of the catalyst almost in that journey of sort of how you rebuild your sense of self, rather than being him just telling a story like it's a charity film talking about having cancer. It's not that at all. It's just using that journey to kind of illustrate that sense of kind of how how we all do struggle with our sense of self through adversity sometimes, and how you cling on to that.
Wow, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So I told you this is the best session of the festival, and honestly, I've done this for 3 or 4 years, and the standard just gets higher and higher and higher. The enterprise, the imagination, it's fantastic, and I want to thank each and every one of you for incredible performances, incredible ideas, and putting up with a rather challenging format. As you can see, I'm the brutal commercial realist, and Catherine here is the one who will touch your kind of creative soul and link with you. And we have the unenviable task, do we not, of deciding which of you has the best idea.
Yeah, and we should say, this is nonsense. You would never come in and pitch in front of an audience of hundreds. You would come and have a nice coffee with me, maybe a biscuit. It's like, you guys have, I'm trying to think of a non-gender normative way of saying balls of steel, but absolutely, thank you so much for coming in and braving the gauntlet. It's really impressive. When we were shortlisting down to the sort of 8 people who would pitch, on paper it was like, well, any of these could be a random act. It's really exciting to sort of see the standard, as Chris says, this high.
Yeah, I always find it incredibly nourishing to come here and see the brain cells producing such kind of great ideas for content, and keeps me sort of in touch with the.
It keeps you young, Chris.
Keeps me young. Keeps me young. Thank you so much. So look, the winner is announced tomorrow evening at the Edinburgh TV Awards, which will be presented by Nish Kumar in the Pentland. So remember to be there. And please, make sure you join our new entrants from the network on Friday at Network Live, which is at 12:45 in the Cromdale. So I'll conclude by asking you all to say thank you for today's live pitches. They were very, very brave. And to our sponsors, Random Acts.